My son's crime shattered our lives, and my wife left because I remind her of him. I sit on the edge of my bed, staring down at an old photograph of him. It's one of those cheap, flimsy prints you get from a department store. I can't even remember what the occasion was, maybe a school picture day or some family gathering where we all had to look nice for the camera. He's grinning wide in the photo, that bright smile that used to fill me with such a deep sense of pride. His eyes, alive with a spark of energy, seem to leap off the page. He's young here, maybe 10 or 12. Just a kid. It's hard to reconcile that image with the one that's seared into my mind from the courthouse. The one where he's standing before the judge, his head lowered, his hands trembling as the verdict is read aloud. His face had been pale, almost gray, and his shoulders slumped forward as if the weight of the world had finally broken him. It's the same face, the same boy I raised, but now it's like he's a stranger to me. Guilty. That word echoes in my mind, night after night, no matter how hard I try to drown it out. There's no escaping it. It's branded into my memory, into every fiber of who I am now. It's been a month since that day in court, a month since my son was sentenced to prison for a crime that's too horrific to even say aloud. I've tried to understand it, to make sense of how it all happened, but nothing seems to fit. Nothing explains how my son, the boy I raised, could do something so monstrous. And yet, the evidence was all there, undeniable, irrefutable. The world I once knew, the life I thought we had, shattered into a million pieces in an instant. But the real blow came after the trial, when my wife, no, my ex-wife now, left me. I should have seen it coming. In the weeks leading up to the sentencing, she'd been distant, like she was pulling away from me little by little. But I thought we were both just grieving, both struggling to cope with what our son had done. I thought we'd get through it together. I thought, as parents, we could help each other heal, even if we couldn't change what had happened. It wasn't until that night, when we were sitting at the kitchen table in silence, that she finally said it. "You look too much like him." Her voice was quiet, almost like she was afraid to say it. I remember looking up at her, confused at first, unsure of what she meant. We'd barely spoken in days, and I thought this was finally the moment where we'd talk, where we'd try to make sense of everything. But instead, her words landed like a punch to the gut. She couldn't even look at me when she said it. Her eyes were fixed on the table, her hands clutched around her coffee mug like it was the only thing grounding her to this world. I stared at her, waiting for her to say more, waiting for her to explain what she meant. But she didn't. That was it. Those 6 words hung between us, and then she stood up and walked away. The next morning, I found her suitcase by the front door. I don't know how long she'd been planning to leave, but there it was, already packed and waiting. When she came downstairs, she didn't cry, didn't say anything about how sorry she was or how hard it was for her to leave. She just stood there, looking at the floor like she couldn't bear to face me. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice hollow. "I can't stay here. Every time I look at you, I see him. And I can't forgive that." I didn't know what to say. How do you respond to something like that? I tried to reach out to her, tried to tell her we could get through this together, but my words felt empty, even to me. The truth was, deep down, I understood. She couldn't separate me from our son, from the boy who had ruined so many lives, including our own. And maybe, in some way, I couldn't either. So she left. And just like that, the life we'd built together, the family we once were, was gone. I watched her walk out the door, her suitcase rolling behind her, and I didn't stop her. What would have been the point? The damage had already been done, and there was no going back. Not for her. Not for any of us. Now it's just me, alone in this house that used to be filled with laughter, with warmth. I walk through the empty rooms, each one a reminder of what we had and what we lost. The silence here is suffocating, but I don't know how to fill it. The phone doesn't ring anymore. Our friends, the ones we thought were so close, don't stop by. No one brings over casseroles or offers their condolences. They all disappeared the moment the news broke, the moment it became clear what our son had done. And honestly, I can't blame them. Every time I step outside, I feel the weight of their stares. The people in town, they don't say anything to me directly, but I can see the way they look at me. Their eyes are filled with pity, with judgment, with fear. Some cross the street to avoid me. Others just nod stiffly, like they don't know what else to do. And the whispers. I hear them even when they're not there. They echo in the back of my mind, just like that damned word from the trial. I go to the grocery store once a week, just to keep up appearances, just to remind myself that I still exist in the world. But even there, it feels like I'm walking through a ghost town. People avoid my aisle, pretend they don't see me. It's like I've become invisible. Or maybe they think that if they ignore me long enough, I'll disappear altogether. And sometimes, I wish I could. A few weeks after my wife left, I finally mustered the courage to visit him. My son. The drive to the prison was long, almost surreal. I kept replaying the past in my mind, trying to find some clue, some moment where things went wrong. But the truth is, there's no single moment. It's 1,000 tiny decisions, 1,000 little things that built up over the years, and then one day, everything just snapped. When I got to the prison, they made me go through the whole routine, emptying my pockets, walking through metal detectors, the guards looking at me like I might be just as guilty as the person I was there to see. By the time they led me to the visitation room, my stomach was in knots. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. When he finally walked in, I barely recognized him. His face was pale, his eyes sunken in. His hair was longer than I remembered, unkempt and tangled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. I sat there, staring at him, waiting for something, an apology, an explanation, anything. But he just sat down across from me, his eyes darting everywhere except at me. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. I opened my mouth a few times, trying to start a conversation, but the words wouldn't come. What was I supposed to say? How could I ask him why he did it? How could I ask him anything, really? Finally, I cleared my throat and said, "How are you holding up?" He just shrugged. A small, pathetic shrug that didn't tell me anything. His eyes were glassy, distant, like he was somewhere far away. I wondered if he even really knew I was there. After another long silence, he muttered, "It's not so bad." I didn't know what to say to that. How do you respond when your son tells you prison isn't so bad? I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to make him understand the gravity of what he'd done. But I couldn't. The truth is, I was scared. Scared of him, scared of what I might find if I pushed too hard. Scared that the boy I'd raised was truly gone, and in his place was this hollow shell sitting across from me. So I just nodded, and we sat there for the rest of the hour in silence. When the guard finally came to take him back, he stood up slowly, almost reluctantly. For a brief moment, he looked at me, and there was something in his eyes, regret, maybe, or guilt. I don't know. But then he turned and walked away without a word. That was the last time I saw him. When I got home that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. I hadn't really looked at myself in weeks, but that night, something made me stop and take a good, hard look. And for the first time, I saw what my wife had seen. I saw him. My son's reflection was staring back at me. The same jawline, the same tired eyes, the same expressions I'd seen on him for years. And in that moment, I understood why she couldn't stay. How could she look at me without seeing him? How could she live in this house, wake up every day, and see the face of the boy who had shattered so many lives? And now, I couldn't separate us either. For weeks after that, I avoided mirrors altogether. I'd go to the bathroom in the dark, never turning on the light. I'd glance away from my reflection in store windows or the rearview mirror. It wasn't just his face I saw in mine, it was the guilt, the shame, the disbelief. Every time I caught my own reflection, it was like being reminded that I had failed. Failed as a father. Failed to stop what happened. Failed to protect my family, the people in town, the victims. All of it. I think about my wife often. I wonder where she is now, if she's found a way to move on. I wonder if she's happier without me, without the constant reminder of the son we lost, even though he's still alive. I try not to blame her for leaving. In some strange way, I think she did the right thing. She's stronger than I am for walking away. She had the courage to leave the ghosts behind, while I stay here, haunted by every memory, every echo of what once was. I'm still not sure why I stay in this house. Maybe because it's the last connection I have to him, even though it's painful. Maybe it's because I don't know where else to go, and the idea of starting over somewhere new feels too exhausting, too pointless. Or maybe, deep down, I think I deserve this. I deserve to live with the memories, with the guilt, with the whispers of a town that's long since written me off as part of the problem. Sometimes, I go through old photo albums, even though I know I shouldn't. It's masochistic, really, flipping through page after page of birthday parties, soccer games, family vacations. All these moments frozen in time, moments that once made me so proud to be his father. And now? Now they feel like someone else's life. Someone else's family. I remember the way I used to talk about him to my friends, my coworkers. My son's smart, I'd say. He's going to do something great one day. I just know it. I remember the swell of pride I felt when I watched him graduate from high school, when he got his first job, when he stood on the edge of adulthood, ready to take on the world. I'd never imagined that this was where we'd end up. That I'd be sitting here, in this empty house, wondering where it all went wrong. The anger comes and goes in waves. Some days, it's all I can feel, boiling up inside of me until I want to scream. I want to ask him why. Why he did it. Why he threw everything away. Why he ruined so many lives, including his own. But there's no one here to answer those questions, no one to yell at except the walls. So the anger fades, leaving behind nothing but exhaustion. I know I'm not proud of him anymore. I don't think I ever will be. How could I be proud of someone who did something so unforgivable? The love, though, that's the part I can't seem to get rid of. It's still there, buried somewhere deep inside me, even if I don't want it to be. I think that's the cruelest part of all. No matter what he's done, no matter how much he's destroyed, he's still my son. And I hate myself for still loving him. I've thought about writing to him, but every time I sit down to do it, the words don't come. What would I even say? What could I say that would make any difference? I doubt he'd even read it. And even if he did, would it matter? Would it change anything? Probably not. We're both too far gone now, too broken to fix what's been shattered. I don't know what the future holds. Some days, I think about selling the house, moving far away, starting over somewhere no one knows me or my past. But then I realize that no matter where I go, I'll still be carrying all of this with me. The guilt. The shame. The knowledge that my son is sitting in a prison cell because of what he did, because of who he became. I've learned to live with the silence. I've learned to live with the whispers, the stares, the emptiness. I've learned to live with the face in the mirror, even though I still don't recognize it most days. But I haven't learned to forgive. I don't think I ever will, not him, not myself, not anyone. Because how do you forgive something like this? Maybe one day, I'll find a way to move on. Maybe one day, the weight will feel a little lighter, the memories a little less sharp. But for now, I'm just here, in this house that used to be a home, trying to make sense of a life that no longer makes any sense at all. And maybe that's all I can do. Just sit here and keep breathing, keep moving forward, even when I don't know where I'm going. Because what else is there? The love remains, buried deep, tangled up with the pain and the anger and the shame. It's a part of me now, just like the guilt, just like the face in the mirror that looks too much like his. I'm not proud of my son. I never will be again. But he's still my son. And that's a burden I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed these Reddit stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.